So one thing I'm happy about is the fact that these studs seem to be screwed into the manifold and not the catalytic converter, so I don't have to remove them, I don't have to transfer them over. So that's kind of cool. Really? Okay, awkward angle, awkward angle. This is when I need a real vise. Okay, you suck. Hang on, hang on. I've got to be able to do this. Okay, that stud just came out. That sucks. And that one too. Not to worry. No big deal. Why are we stuck on? Because we didn't get these off all the way. Same thing. Okay, that's just how it wanted to happen. So, got our gaskets. I think these can probably be reused. They look fine, they don't look cracked in any way. I think we were right here. Right about there. So we'll reuse those. Anyway, no big deal. Here's our old dead cat. And as you can see, you definitely want to inspect them. You want to see if they're clogged. This one is about as I expected, not clogged at all. Just, you know, the catalyst has deteriorated over time, which happens. You know, they don't make these perfectly. Technically speaking, a catalyst, when you're talking about a chemical reaction, a catalyst doesn't participate in the chemical reaction. It's not used up by the chemical reaction, it just facilitates the reaction. It allows the reaction to happen much, much quicker. So that's what the catalyst does. So the catalyst should not be used up by the chemical reaction of converting exhaust gases into less noxious gases. It's what actually happens is just because of heat cycles, because nothing is perfect, the catalyst metals actually end up flaking away because they're actually deposited onto an aluminum oxide layer that's on this little honeycomb inside here. And they just, you know, the aluminum oxide layer just kind of starts to flake off after a while and takes the precious metals with it. And so they just go out the tailpipe, and then these catalysts stop working after a couple 100,000 miles, or I don't know, 150 maybe is about the average. This car actually has 82,000 miles on it. So it's not exactly the average, but also age, you know, takes care of them after a while. So our replacement manifold looks like this. And I just want to make sure that the dimensions are the same. Just want to see where it expects us to be. Looks like right about there. So I am going to need to transfer these lower bolts over, and I did break one right here. So I'm going to need to do something about that. I'm going to need to see if I either have a stud like this, which I might, or I'll just need to go and replace it. So here's another thing to be concerned about, which I think is actually going to be a problem, is this old stud. You can see the flange on this old one, on this old catalytic converter, was much thicker than the new flange is. And because this is not you know, an all thread rod, it's actually, you know, there's no threading here in this part. When I put this through, that much is going to stick out, and that's not going to thread all the way through the exhaust manifold. So that's a huge problem. I'm going to need to replace these studs as well as these bolts. So that does suck. I'll need to get some shorter ones, some, you know, all thread studs, thread them in. I'm not sure that I have 4 of those plus one to replace this. I don't know, I gotta do some digging. These are 10mm studs, M10 studs. And I just so happen to have sorted all my bolts into sizes a little while ago, so I've got my bag of M10 bolts and fasteners over here. So I'm gonna dig around in this for a second and see if I can find something that's usable. I mean, one thing I can do, I can take these old head studs and just cut them off and make those the new studs. Let's see if that thread pitch is the same. It is. Same thread pitch, same bolt. And I have a lot of these old head studs. And these are going to be fine for, I mean, I wouldn't reuse them as head bolts, but totally fine for exhausts. These were, you know, like torque to yield fasteners. So they're from a BMW. They were recommended to be replaced, but I would have no problems reusing them for an application like this. Now, one situation I have here is if I take these studs out, these bottom ones here are going to be M10 as well. These were threaded into this converter down here, but they're not going to be threaded for this converter, which is what I was afraid of. So we're going to have to replace that with just bolts, it looks like. Okay guys, I seem to have a number of these, which are all the same. They're 8.8s. These definitely came off of BMW because BMW likes to use this zinc coating on here. These should be fine though. I think I'm gonna use, because I have 4 of these for right here, I'm gonna use these to actually bolt this new manifold up to the head rather than reuse these studs and try to come up with new studs and reuse these bolts for that, or these nuts for it. I'm just going to use these. So I think that's going to solve that issue. And then I'm going to try to use, I've got 3 more of them. I'm going to try to use them for down here. They do actually stick out quite a ways. These old nuts are, I think are going to work. They might not go on as far as they did before. Since I need a new stud, and I believe these are identical, I'm just going to take one off of here. So I think if I just grab this like that, I should be able to get this off of here, or not, or not. Just chewing up the bolt. This might end in disaster. That's just going to spin it. Whew, look at that. That's crazy. Wow. Well, listen, I don't want to damage the jaws of my, I don't want to damage these jaws too much here. I kind of care about this tool. So yeah, it should be fine. There you go, good old American steel. So rather than do that, I will just find some other nuts. The problem is I'm having trouble finding M10 nuts. So the orientation of this on the manifold was like this. These 2 bolts were in line with the oxygen sensor, and this was pointing downward like that. So this was over off to the side. So in other words, if you try to do it like this, with this being oriented towards this side of the manifold, the side that would go to the car, would be wrong. It has to be oriented away and up off to the side. So given that it's supposed to be oriented like that, and given that that orientation is going to be like that, I do believe that's going to be the matching orientation. Yes. Is that right? Does that seem right? Or is it that? That's what it's going to be. That's the matching orientation. So to make sure that we get this right, I'm going to put it on like this, and I'm going to take it over to the car just to make sure that it's right. So these are going to be what I'm going to use, and we should be able to reuse these gaskets. Okay, I think these are 16. Yeah. Just sort of running them down badly. I want to get this old gasket off of here. Now this gasket is pretty thin. I don't think I need to use this when I put this back in right now to just check the alignment of things. So it feels like these are going to work. I just checked it. And just in case you guys are wondering how much space we have or how long these are about 25 millimeters long. That's the length that I've got from the washer to the end of the bolt. So you probably want to go a little longer than that. 30, maybe 30 millimeters would be good. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm not going to take the downpipe out of there just because it looks like it would be a little bit unruly, and it looks like the O2 sensor would kind of get banged into some things. So I don't want to take it out if I don't have to. And I think I can just kind of, I can put these bolts in from above and start screwing things in, and I think once we get a little tension, they'll just, the nuts will screw together, and I think I'll be able to tighten things. So I think I'm just going to try it that way. That way, that just seems easiest to me. So I'm going to tighten these on. Need to use a 16 wrench for that. And remember, these nuts, or these fasteners were the same as these. So that's how much room I had. And these ones, 25 millimeters is perfect. So these were just perfect for this. This catalytic converter is made by MagnaFlow, by the way. Got it on Amazon. It's carb compliant. I'm in California here, so I have to buy something that's carb compliant. They also sell one that isn't carb compliant. This was $300 and something, I think $380. Which I think is on the expensive side for a catalytic converter, but it's the only one we can find. So you guys in other states probably have more options. But California and New York, we don't have those options. This coolant pipe is going to go over this lower bolt right here, this rear lower one, but I'm going to move it out of the way so I can get the manifold on easily. And I've got one bolt in the side here. I've got the little gasket on. Hopefully that doesn't fall off. I'm going to try to hold it on. I don't want to let go of this gasket. Hang on. And that downpipe has kind of dropped down a little. Let's see if I can pull it up a little bit, and maybe I can get one of the nuts on there. That would be really nice. Okay, I do believe I have one started. So I'll drop these two fasteners in here. This might be at like an odd angle. So there's that one going through. Oh, and we dropped the gasket. That sucks. Let's just get one of these fasteners on so we can hold the head, hold the exhaust manifold to the head. So I've been able to slip two of the bolts in, and well, I've got all three of the bolts in, but I've got two of the nuts on. I just don't have the nut on this upper one. That's going to be that odd size nut that's actually a 16. So there's not enough thread sticking through to get that one started first. I can see that I need to draw the lower two up first. That way the downpipe is drawn up and squeezed tight to the bottom of the catalytic converter. And then I can probably get that top bolt on there and screw it down. So I don't really think I'm going to film anything on this because it's just, it's a little too difficult to film, but you guys know what I'm doing. So I'm just going to get down there with ratchets and tools and try to snug those bolts up as best I can. So I'm just going to try to get those snugged. The only thing I need to get on now is that bracket bolt, which Should be able to do a little reach around here. This is an important bracket, by the way. Without this bracket, the cast iron manifold would probably crack. And it feels like we're sort of tweaked in a little way by the manifold. So I'm going to need to loosen the manifold up top so that I can get this bolt into where it needs to be. I think I'm only going to loosen it. I just want to pry this back a little so that I have like a little wiggle room down there. I might just be supporting the weight of the engine a little bit. Maybe I can just bring my jack under there with me, jack on the bottom of the oil pan, jack up just very slightly. That might give us the wiggle room that we need. But I just got to go down there and figure it out. Okay guys, so I got it done. I ended up needing to loosen those lower 3 bolts a little in order to push it up into place. Really awkward, really difficult, but got it done. So we'll just get all these bolts back on. This lower pipe, I want to make sure is on the stud it wants to be on. Oh, I see. It actually came out a little from the engine. Okay, yeah, I'm going to try to take this off because it's just not going. It's not flexible enough for some reason. Hang on, maybe it's easier to get it off at the firewall. I should have made sure that was slid on properly when I put the manifold back on, so make sure you do that. Okay, here. I don't care if we've got some coolant leaking. I will take care of that in a second. So now that we've got this here, so now I can feel that it's on where it needs to be. Yeah, okay, so it's on. That was a lot of trouble. I believe I need this longer one to get this on. See if I can just get this on. Yeah. Okay, let me get this ring clamp back into place. Just want to make sure that everything is tight. Yeah. Yeah, we're good. So let's get that EGR pipe screwed in all the way. Glad we got it started. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I put it back on where it goes on the other side, which I just slipped it on. I'll just get it tightened up, which should be lots of fun. Yeah, so I can't turn it anymore. So that's on. Let's put our oxygen sensor back into place. I think these sensors were changed recently. These wires look a little too new. This wire also kind of seems like it's a little too long. Exhaust shield. Go back into place. So I dare say this was a little more difficult to work on than I thought it would be. The Kia Sportage that I've worked on before is a lot easier, which is kind of surprising. So we get our wiring harness back up over here. Need some new zip ties. Hopefully I can reuse this. Actually, I don't think I can. So, oops. But you know what? Who cares? It's not really gonna affect anything. It's gonna be fine. Get this put back on. Okay. Now we'll just go back there, get that EGR pipe tightened up. I made sure to slip it on. Oh, it looks like it slipped off. This thing has a light on it, which I never realized. That's really helpful. Okay. That is it. We are done. We are ready to go. So I'm gonna get the car started next. One really important thing when you're replacing a cat is you wanna let it warm up for 15 minutes before you actually go for a drive. Otherwise the honeycomb inside could actually come loose from the walls of the catalytic converter. So you wanna make sure you do that. So I'm gonna get this thing started and we'll just let it idle while I get my computer all ready. So we'll check things again once it's warmed up. So you guys can see that the oil is burning off, all that penetrating oil that I use. So that's gonna be burning off the manifold for, a couple minutes. So don't worry about that if you use penetrating fluid, just be aware. So here you go, guys. Here's confirmation of the fix. As you can see, our rear O2 sensor is not mimicking the front O2 sensor anymore. You can see that at any speed, the catalytic converter is doing its job, and we're all good. Okay, I also want to repeat our oxygen storage test. So take the intake off here so we can introduce some propane. I've got propane in there. I'm going to turn it off. So you can see how much longer. We were at frame 280. You can see how much longer. Let me stop that. So at frame 280 is when I stopped the propane. You can see how much longer it continued for another 10 frames. That's not exactly 10 seconds, but you know, you can see how much longer it was compared to our first test. There was basically no oxygen storage in this thing. So yeah, there are your two confirmations of the fix, guys. So in case you're wondering how I knew that it was the first catalytic converter that needed to be replaced and not the downstream one, well, it's because of the location of the oxygen sensors. They were immediately before the first cat and immediately after the first cat. So they're basically monitoring what that first catalytic converter does. So that's the one you need to replace, the one I've just shown you. It's a little more trouble than I thought it would be at the end of the day, but you know, it's doable. You know, you guys saw how fairly easy it is. You just got to make sure you get some new fasteners and everything. Or if you just go with the OEM, it's going to be a whole lot easier on you. But again, be aware that you might break some old bolts getting it out. Anyway, I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, please throw me a subscribe. I'm on Patreon now if you want to support the channel. I'm the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.